Hey guys, tonight we travel somewhere hot, really hot. The kind of dry, blistering heat that bakes your eyelashes and turns your sandals into molten flippers. You're in ancient Persia, smack in the middle of an empire where summer doesn't play around. The sun isn't just shining, it's declaring war. But what's strange is, you're not sweating. Not yet, as you step through the sun-bleached gates of a Persian town. The streets are empty, the walls glow like clay lanterns, and the wind whispers in your ears, cool. Somehow, the buildings, pale and stoic, seem to lean toward the breeze as if they're in on a secret. And you, newcomer to this scorched landscape, are about to discover one of history's coolest tricks, literally. You're not here to survive the heat. You're here to understand how a civilization outsmarted it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments. Are you listening in a chilly evening drizzle or sweating under a ceiling fan? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk through narrow alleys that seem to fold in on themselves, casting deep shadows. These aren't just charming little paths, they're survival mechanisms. Historians still argue whether ancient Persian architects deliberately narrowed streets to funnel airflow or if it was happy accident. Either way, it's working. You feel it. Air gently brushing your skin, dancing past thick mud brick walls that absorb sunlight during the day and cool off slowly through the night. A cart rattles by. You step aside and lean against a wall. It's cool to the touch. You blink. How? It's been under the same sun as you. But then, it hits you. The color, the texture, the materials. These homes weren't just built, they were engineered for this. You peek into a courtyard. There's a central fountain, still and blue like a painted sky. The water isn't just decorative, it's strategic. It moistens the air, drops the temperature, and brings that whispering breeze to life. A cat lounges nearby, clearly having figured all this out long before you. You keep walking. On rooftops, you spot terracotta urns, sometimes shaded by small structures. Some hold water, some are probably filled with dates, cooling under the wind, and in almost every home, thick walls, high ceilings, small windows placed just right, always out of direct sunlight. The result? Interiors stay remarkably cool. It's not luxury, it's necessity, and that necessity drives ingenuity. But here's the kicker. These ancient folks were managing heat in ways we still struggle with today. While modern cities fight to survive heat waves with energy-guzzling air conditioners, the Persians, centuries ago, already had the blueprint for sustainable cooling. One old man, wrapped in linen, beckons you inside his modest home. You expect a blast of oven air, but instead, it's temperate. The scent of saffron rice lingers. Clay floors radiate a subtle chill. He laughs at your bewildered face. You try to explain how, in the 21st century, we blast compressors and suck energy from power grids just to achieve this level of comfort. He just points to the ceiling, where a narrow shaft leads upward into a small dome. You squint. That's where the magic is. But not yet. You'll understand soon enough. You wander again, this time paying closer attention. The design patterns are everywhere. Thick adobe walls, often over a meter wide, act as thermal batteries. During the day, they absorb heat. At night, they release it, but slowly, steadily. It's not about fighting nature. It's about negotiating with it. One building catches your eye. It's taller, with a strange chimney-like structure rising above the roof. You'll see more of those later. But even now, something about it feels calculated, measured, like someone studied the wind, mapped the sun and said, "This is how we keep our cool." Back in the bustling town center, you notice how communal life bends to the rhythm of the heat. Markets open early, close midday, and reopen at dusk. Carpets lie rolled in shaded corners. Tea is sipped slowly, as if to avoid startling the air. Even the children play in the shadows, darting between patches of light like desert foxes. And everywhere, you feel it. A quiet understanding between the people and their environment. No one is trying to conquer the climate here. They're adapting, flowing with it, playing chess with the sun, and winning. You pause to sip from a goatskin flask offered by a merchant. It's cool. Unexpectedly, you ask how. But he just smiles and gestures toward a shaded clay alcove. You peer in. There's a jar. Slightly damp. It's called a zir, an ancient evaporative cooling pot. The principle is simple. Water seeps through the porous clay and evaporates from the surface, pulling heat from the inside as it does. No plugs, no wires, just physics. Quirky side note. Some early desert travelers carried smaller versions of these pots tied to camels, keeping water cool on long treks. Persian innovation literally on the move. As the sun starts to dip behind the hills, casting long gold beams across the rooftops, you finally begin to understand. This wasn't just survival, it was science before science had a name. Design born from observation, patience, and a deep respect for the brutal beauty of the land. And this is just the beginning. You haven't even met the windcatchers yet. You follow the alleyways as they twist and dip like lazy rivers of stone. And each corner seems to open up a new clue to the mystery of how this place stays so surprisingly cool. The heat outside is still real, it's not some mirage. But what you're realizing is that ancient Persians didn't try to eliminate it, they bent it to their will. You step into another home. This one slightly larger, more angular, and at first glance unremarkable. But then you notice how the walls breathe. Not literally, of course. But their placement, thick and sturdy, almost seems to push warm air upward and away while trapping coolness below. It's like walking into the middle of a conversation between earth and air. The construction material is no accident. Mud brick, sun-baked and timeless, forms the foundation of these homes. Historians still debate whether the preference for mud brick was born purely of availability or if it was an early conscious decision to harness thermal mass. Either way, the result is genius. The bricks store heat during the scorching day and slowly release it during the chilly desert night, creating a natural buffer that flattens out the extremes. Your hand brushes the wall, it's warm, but not hot. Inside the room, it's cooler than outside, and you haven't seen a single fan or bucket of ice. Just geometry, shade, and patience. Now take a moment to look up. Ceilings are high, sometimes arched, sometimes domed. Heat, as you might expect, rises, but in a room with enough vertical space, that heat collects up above your head, far from where you sit or sleep. And there's often a small vent or opening at the top, just enough to let that trapped warmth escape into the sky, drawing in cooler air from lower in the house. You take a breath. It's fresher than you expected. Cooler, slightly moist. It's not just air, it's engineered air. A woman walks past, balancing a clay jar on her head, and gestures for you to follow her through a side corridor. You obey, of course, because you're curious and she clearly knows more than you. She stops at a shaded archway and points to a square inner courtyard. The space is open to the sky, surrounded by shaded walkways. In the center, a simple pool, still and gleaming. Courtyards like these were the lungs of Persian homes. They were never just ornamental. They pulled light into the house, helped air circulate, and even cooled down interiors by encouraging airflow from shaded corridors into sunlit spaces. And those corridors, have you noticed? They're always aligned in careful directions. Ancient architects took into account prevailing wind patterns, sunlight angles, and even seasonal variations when laying out floor plans. Some of this was intuitive, passed down over generations, but some of it, uncannily scientific. There's a rumor, historians scoff, but the tale persists, that some architects in early Persia carried strips of silk and copper as wind sensors, watching how they fluttered before deciding where to place windows and doors. A poetic image, even if probably exaggerated, but it reflects a deeper truth. They didn't guess. They watched, they listened, and they built accordingly. You climb a few steps to a raised terrace. From here, you can see the layout of several homes at once. Look closer. Notice how few of them open directly into the street. Instead, they open into one another. This isn't just for privacy, it's climate strategy. By isolating the inner sanctum from direct sun and wind blasts, the entire house becomes a temperature-regulated unit. In the distance, you catch sight of another structure rising above the homes like a curious chimney. It leans slightly into the wind. You're not ready to climb it yet, but soon. For now, you just stare, wondering how something that looks so ordinary could be so transformative. Let's zoom in on a small detail: window placement. Persian windows weren't like your average Western glass panes. They were often small, high-set, and fitted with wooden screens called mashrabiyah or colored glass orsi. These let in filtered light without the oppressive heat, and when combined with the natural cross ventilation built into the home, they created little microclimates in every room. Some even claim that certain geometric window patterns were designed to scatter light in specific ways, acting as natural sun diffusers. Painting the room in soft hues without cooking the inhabitants. Fringe theory? Maybe, but it's awfully specific coincidence if not. You lean against a pillar and glance at a low bench made of stone. A cushion rests on top, but the stone itself remains cool. Here's another trick. Thermal inertia. Stone, especially when shaded, holds its coolness for hours. Ancient Persians didn't need air-conditioned couches. They had physics-approved furniture. There's a sound nearby, two kids laughing as they pour water from one ceramic jug into another. The splash echoes, and for a moment, you realize just how silent the house is otherwise. These homes, thick-walled and softly shaded, muffle sound as well as heat. The result is an oasis of calm, where even time seems to move a little slower. Now, if you had X-ray vision, you'd see that beneath many of these homes run Qanats, ancient underground water channels that we'll talk more about later. For now, just know that these weren't just about irrigation. They played a silent but crucial role in climate control. 2. Your guide returns, handing you a cup of something sweet, rosewater and lime. Icy and clear. You blink. Icy? But how? It's 1000 BCE and there's no refrigerator. She just grins and gestures toward a hill on the city's edge. Something cold is hiding there. Something that's going to make your jaw drop. But first, one last thought. Even the angles of the homes you pass are part of the cooling plan. The orientation of each house is carefully chosen, with narrow sides facing the sun's harshest paths, and shaded openings toward prevailing winds. This isn't just architecture, it's strategy, a chessboard of mud and breeze, played by masters long forgotten. You don't know it yet, but the real magic is just around the corner, built from wind, sand, and shadows. Ready to meet it? You're now standing at the foot of a towering structure. Unmistakable even in the sprawling mud brick cityscape, a badger. Or as you might call it, a windcatcher. It rises above the flat roofs. A sort of ancient air-conditioning tower reaching skyward, like a giant ear tuned to the desert's whispers. This thing isn't just decoration, it's a cooling powerhouse. Historians still argue whether the earliest badgers were purely Persian inventions or if influences from neighboring civilizations played a role. But what's undeniable is the badger's genius. You're about to see how the Persians built the world's first natural ventilation system. Centuries before modern AC units hummed to life. You look up at the multiple vertical shafts and openings facing the wind's most common directions. The badger works by catching the slightest breeze and channeling it down into the building. This wind funnels through the tower's internal passages, cooling as it passes through the shaded, sometimes wet interior walls, and then descends into living spaces below. If you press your ear against the tower, you might hear the rush of wind, like nature's own air duct humming softly, a gentle roar that cools even when the day outside is unforgiving. It's not magic, it's physics. But here's the kicker. The badger doesn't just bring in fresh air. It creates pressure differences that pull hot air out of the house. Almost like a self-sustaining breath, warm air rises and escapes, while cooler air is pulled in, ventilation without electricity or fans. You wander inside one of these towers. The air suddenly cooler, fresher. There's an almost mystical quality to the place, as if you're walking inside the lungs of the city itself. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some badgers were cleverly designed with multiple compartments, one side facing the hot desert wind to catch cooling breezes, the other side designed to act as a chimney, expelling warm air. Imagine an ancient building breathing, alive and self-regulating. You find a small pool at the tower's base, fed by Qanat water, which cools the incoming air further through evaporation, a primitive but effective form of air conditioning. Splash your hand in the water, it's surprisingly cold. Even in the heat, you probably won't survive the temptation to lean in and breathe deeply. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, you notice how the badgers create a pleasant microclimate around themselves. often encouraging residents to gather nearby during the hottest hours. It's like an oasis of cool air in a fiery desert. But not everyone was a fan. Some ancient texts hint at debates. Did the windcatchers always work perfectly? What about still days with no breeze? Some argue that on windless days, the badgers' cooling effect was minimal, making them less reliable than modern air conditioners. Yet their simplicity and sustainability kept them central to Persian life for centuries. These towers varied in height, design, and complexity. Some were modest, attached to single rooms. Others were monumental, rising several stories, visible for miles, city landmarks in their own right. Imagine ancient Persians using these giants to cool not just their homes but public baths, bazaars, and even palaces. But the badger wasn't just about cooling. It was a statement about human ingenuity and harmony with nature. These towers were often ornately decorated, with intricate brick patterns and painted details, blending function with art. There's even evidence that some windcatchers used water trickling down interior walls or pools to amplify cooling, a natural evaporative system. You can almost feel the gentle humidity rising as the dry desert heat softens. And in some cases, badgers were paired with ice storage pits, or yachtals, which we'll explore soon. Cool air from the windcatcher could be directed over ice, creating chilling breezes that would have made any modern HVAC jealous. Quirky side note. Locals sometimes called these towers the whispers of the wind, believing that the cooler air carried messages or even spirits from distant lands. As you step back into the sunlit street, you feel a newfound respect for these structures. They aren't just ancient curiosities, they're early masterpieces of sustainable engineering. You realize that while today's buildings often fight nature, the badger teaches you to listen and work with it. Remember that feeling? That deep breath of cool air on a scorching day? The badger gave that to people thousands of years ago. And that's just the beginning. The heat starts to dip just a little as the sun sinks lower, casting long, golden shadows across the city. But even though it's evening, you know the real challenge is coming. How do you stay cool through the night when the temperature can drop from scorching to freezing in a matter of hours? You don't need to look far for the answer. Off to the side, near the city's edge, you spot a peculiar structure, a large dome-like mound of earth. It doesn't look like much from here, but as you approach, you realize this is one of the legendary yachtals, the ancient ice pits that have kept the Persian Empire cool long before electricity was ever a twinkle in humanity's eye. Historians still argue how the Persians managed to create and store ice in a desert climate with no modern refrigeration. Was it the combination of advanced architecture, deep engineering, and pure ingenuity? Or were there hidden techniques lost to time? Whatever the case, the results were undeniable. The yachtshul was one of the most effective ways the Persians stored ice and cool air. You're standing on the edge of this giant earth mound, noticing the cool breeze that always seems to find you. Inside the yachtshul, it's dark and mysterious, but the concept is simple. The yachtshul was built with a thick, domed roof made of mud brick, designed to trap cool air while keeping the harsh heat of the sun at bay. It was insulated with layers of earth, and the shape of the mound acted like a natural cooler, drawing the chill of night into its interior. The heat outside might be unbearable, but inside, a different world. The trick was the temperature difference between night and day. During the cool nights, ice would form naturally in the yachtchal's inner chambers. Water, which had been stored in large containers, would freeze in the evening chill and stay solid inside the thick dome. Even as the desert sun returned in the morning. It's like a magic trick. A desert refrigerator built with the simplest materials. And when the summer heat was truly unbearable, Persian people could break off chunks of ice, bringing relief in the form of cooling drinks, baths, and even food preservation. These ice blocks weren't just for luxury, they were essential in a world where the relentless heat made daily life difficult. Here's a quirky detail. When the ice ran low, it wasn't just a case of getting more. The local community relied on a cooperative network of yachtals spread throughout the region. One might store ice for a few weeks, another for a few months. The network wasn't just about cooling, it was about survival. Communities came together, not just for food and water, but for comfort in a climate that could otherwise turn deadly. You move closer to the mound, and as you crouch beside it, the air around you feels noticeably cooler. You pause to touch the outer walls, surprisingly cold to the touch. You're reminded that these mounds weren't just about storing ice, they were about creating an oasis in the desert. A place where, for a moment, the relentless heat couldn't claim victory. But there's more to this than just practical cooling. Ice, whether stored in these pits or carried in water jars, had symbolic value in ancient Persian culture. It represented life, preservation, and even purity, in a world where most food spoils quickly under the desert sun. Ice was a sign of wealth and control. The rich would use it to preserve delicate fruits or even to chill drinks, turning an otherwise oppressive climate into a place of comfort. As you stand there in the cooling evening, the yakshal's significance begins to sink in. This is more than just an ancient technology. It's a way of bending the rules of nature. In a land of extremes, the Persians figured out how to level the playing field. They made their homes, their cities, their lives, just a little cooler, a little more bearable. Now imagine this. You walk through the city's streets at night. The air is cool but still carries a whisper of heat from the sun's earlier assault. Above you, the starry desert sky twinkles, an infinite canvas. In the distance, you see the soft glow of lanterns flickering from homes. And you realize, these homes are staying cool even through the night. You think about the badgers you saw earlier, the windcatchers, and how they were working overtime, funneling cool air into every building, while the yakshals stood guard, keeping ice for those who needed it. The systems didn't work in isolation. They were an integrated system, each part of the whole working seamlessly together. As you continue walking, you pass a public bathhouse, another wonder of Persian engineering. This bathhouse is a hub of activity in the cool night, a place where people come to cleanse, relax, and gather. What you'll notice here, however, is the same system of cooling, just in a different form. The design of the bathhouse uses the very same principles, air channeled through clever architectural elements, cool water circulating, and evaporation working its magic. It's all starting to come together. The genius of Persian cooling systems wasn't about just one thing. It was a comprehensive approach, where architecture, water management, and clever use of nature's rhythms created a deeply livable world in a harsh environment. And, to be honest, it's a bit humbling. You, in your modern air-conditioned world, might take the simple comfort of cool air for granted. But here, in this world, people created the first air conditioning system from the elements themselves, working in harmony with their environment. And it wasn't just about comfort, it was about surviving the desert's unforgiving ways. You smile to yourself, realizing that the secrets of the Persian cool haven't been lost. We've just forgotten how to listen to the wind. You've wandered through the city, felt the breeze, and admired the architecture, but now, it's time for the truly mind-boggling part. Ice in the desert. Yes, you heard that right. You're standing in the middle of one of the hottest, driest places on Earth, yet somehow, the Persians figured out how to create, store, and use ice, long before electric refrigerators even existed. Picture this. It's the dead of summer. The sun blazing down at 40 degrees Celsius or more, and you're holding a chunk of ice. That cold, solid thing that normally melts in seconds outside your freezer is here, persisting for months in these massive, cleverly designed underground icehouses called yakshals. Think of them as the ancient Persian version of your fridge, but way cooler. In every sense, the word yakshal literally means ice pit. These giant domes, often partially buried in the ground, were built with thick walls made from a special type of heat-resistant mortar, crafted from sand, clay, egg whites, lime, goat hair, and ash, a recipe that sounds more like a witch's brew than a building material. But the result? Walls so thick and well insulated they could keep ice frozen in the middle of a desert summer. Historians still debate exactly how the Persians managed to freeze water in the first place. Some say they collected ice naturally formed on winter nights and stored it. Others suggest they used evaporative cooling and carefully timed water releases to freeze ice even in relatively mild nights. What's clear, though, is that the yakshal was an incredible feat of engineering. You peer inside one of these domes, dark and cavernous. The floors slope gently downward, leading to a subterranean chamber where the ice was stored. Above, the high dome shape reflects sunlight and heat away, minimizing melting. Narrow vents at the top of the dome encourage airflow, pulling hot air out and cooler night air in. It's a natural refrigerator, working tirelessly without a single moving part or watt of electricity. Now, here's a quirky detail that will surprise you. The Yakshul was often part of a larger water management system. Underground canals called Qanats brought cool water from distant mountains directly into the city and sometimes into these ice pits. The constant flow of water helped maintain lower temperatures, while the Qanats themselves also cooled surrounding air and soil. You might imagine these ice pits as exclusive luxury items for the rich. But evidence shows they were community resources, used for preserving food, chilling drinks, and even medical uses like reducing fevers. Ice was more than a luxury, it was a lifesaver in the blistering desert heat. One fascinating side note: some Persian rulers reportedly used ice from Yakshuls to cool the massive palace gardens, creating microclimates that allowed exotic plants to thrive, as if nature itself was bowing to human ingenuity. You chuckle to yourself, imagine summer gardening with ice blocks, centuries before modern air conditioning. Remember the wind catchers you saw earlier? Well, some badgirs were cleverly designed to channel air over pools of ice from the Yakshul, creating early forms of what modern engineers call evaporative cooling. When warm air passes over the ice, it chills and descends into living spaces, producing a refreshing breeze. Historians still argue whether the Yakshul was more of a natural freezer or a clever way to store naturally formed ice. But either way, its existence blows modern notions of ancient technology out of the water. You pause to take a deep breath of the cool air near the Yakshul and feel a brief shiver, not from cold, but from awe. You're witnessing the roots of modern air conditioning, wrapped in mud, sweat, and a deep understanding of nature. Next time you complain about your AC bill, remember this: the Persians got here first, with nothing but earth, wind, and a little bit of magic. You stand at the edge of the Yakshul, still marveling at the ancient ingenuity you've just witnessed. But there's something else you need to see, something that ties all this technology together. Something that links the ice pits, the badgirs, and the very layout of the city, the Qanat system. You've heard of them, but now you're about to get a first-hand look at the way these underground water channels brought life and coolness into one of the driest places on Earth. The Qanat system is one of the true wonders of Persian engineering, and it's integral to understanding how ancient Persians stayed cool, even in the dead of summer. You're led to a stone entrance, framed by a series of low, wide arches. Beneath your feet, a deep, shadowed tunnel stretches into the earth. This is one of the Qanats, a subterranean waterway that has been flowing beneath the desert for centuries. Qanats were designed to tap into underground aquifers, bringing cool, fresh water up from deep below the surface to irrigate crops, fill fountains, and even cool homes. The system works by using gravity to push the water through a series of gently sloping tunnels, often stretching for miles. By staying underground, the water avoided the harsh desert heat, which meant it could stay cool and drinkable for longer periods. Historians still debate how the Persians managed to build such intricate, long-distance tunnels with the simple tools available to them at the time. Some say they relied on a technique called vertical shafts, where workers would dig down vertically from the surface to create a series of wells that allowed them to excavate horizontally. Others suggest they used a simple form of surveying, ensuring the tunnels maintained the proper slope to keep the water flowing. You look down the length of the Qanat, your eyes adjusting to the dim light. The walls of the tunnel are damp, and you feel the coolness seeping through the earth. It's a strange sensation, this air, this moisture, running beneath your feet while the scorching desert heat is just miles away. The Qanat system wasn't just about water. It also had an important role in cooling down the city's air. The cool water running through the Qanat helped lower the temperature of the surrounding soil, cooling the air as it traveled up toward the surface. Imagine the effect: air flowing into homes, filtered and cooled by the underground water, carried through badgirs, and circulated through the city like a natural air conditioning system. And the water wasn't just for the privileged. The Qanats were public resources, often serving entire communities, feeding not just the homes but also the communal baths, the markets, and the gardens. In a time when fresh water was a rare commodity, the Qanat was the lifeblood of the city, cool, fresh, and sustaining. You're led through a narrow opening in the Qanat, into a small, cool chamber where water collects and can be diverted to different parts of the city. The air here is noticeably cooler, as if the very ground itself is storing up the chill from the deep. A small stream trickles from a channel in the corner, and you watch as it flows through the chamber, collecting in an open basin. You can feel the difference just by standing here, the coolness of the water, the quiet hum of the earth beneath your feet. It's no wonder that ancient Persians felt a deep connection to these water systems. They were not just essential to survival, they were a source of pride and ingenuity. It was a direct, almost spiritual relationship with the earth that allowed these ancient people to create something that modern technology still struggles to replicate in some parts of the world. But the Qanats weren't only about function, they were also about beauty. Persian gardens, which you've seen dotted throughout the city, often made use of water from these canals. You're struck by how many of these gardens were carefully designed with water features that weren't just ornamental, they were cooling systems. 2. The sound of flowing water, the sight of fountains, and the gentle mist from the Qanat-fed pools created microclimates of their own. In a desert where the temperature could easily exceed 40 degrees Celsius, these green, shaded spaces offered cool respite from the relentless sun. And here's something fascinating. You can still see Qanats in some parts of the modern world today. In countries like Iran, the system has survived into the 21st century, though now it's a delicate balancing act of preservation and modernization. You wonder if some of the forgotten wisdom of these ancient engineers will someday be rediscovered in a world desperately seeking sustainable solutions for water and cooling. As you step out of the Qanat's shadow and back into the warm sunlight, you can't help but think about how these ingenious systems of cooling were all interconnected. The windcatchers directed air from the cool depths of the Qanats. The yachtals stored ice for summer months. And the careful layout of the city's homes and streets made sure that cool air circulated efficiently through every corner. In the modern world, we've come to rely on complicated machines to keep cool. But the ancient Persians did it all with nature and raw ingenuity. They created not just a way to live in the desert but a way to thrive in it. And as you walk away from the Qanat, you finally realize the truth behind their ancient wisdom. It's not just about air conditioning. It's about living in harmony with the natural world, understanding its rhythms, and using that knowledge to make life not just possible but comfortable. As you leave the Qanat and step back into the sun, you feel the temperature shift slightly. It's still hot, of course, but not unbearable. You begin to understand the broader philosophy of the Persians. They didn't view the desert as a hostile environment to fight against. Instead, they worked with it, crafting systems that were sustainable, efficient, and connected to the natural rhythms of the land. The city around you continues to hum with life, and you notice that much of it revolves around managing temperature, airflow, and water. Systems that are so deeply embedded in the city's fabric that you can't help but feel the delicate balance between human design and the desert's relentless energy. But there's more to the Persian approach to cooling than the badgirs, yachtals, and Qanats. As you walk through the streets, you notice that the entire city is designed with a clear understanding of how to manage temperature. The homes you pass are all oriented in specific ways, with walls that face in precise directions to catch or avoid the sun's harshest rays. The streets wind in ways that encourage airflow, while shaded courtyards provide cooler spaces to rest. This wasn't an accident. The layout of Persian cities, particularly in places like Yazd, is a testament to the deep understanding the Persians had of their environment. The city itself was a living, breathing organism, built with the purpose of minimizing the impact of the intense desert heat. It's not just about shelter, it's about making the heat work for you, not against you. You pause in front of a grand home. Its thick adobe walls painted in pale shades that reflect rather than absorb the sun's heat. The windows are small, placed high to avoid direct sunlight but positioned just right to catch the cool breeze flowing in from the windcatchers. The door is narrow, but the passage opens up into a spacious central courtyard, a cool oasis where the air feels noticeably different. You can feel the windcatchers working their magic, channeling the desert breeze down into this carefully crafted space. Now, you're beginning to see the bigger picture. Persian homes, particularly those belonging to the wealthy, were designed with an intricate understanding of how to manage the temperature inside and out. Thick walls, narrow windows, high ceilings, all worked in harmony with the windcatchers and Qanats to ensure that the homes remained comfortable, even during the most intense heat of the summer months. Inside, you're invited to sit and take a rest. The floors are cool under your feet, a stark contrast to the hot ground outside. You wonder, briefly, how much cooler the people here must have felt compared to the rest of the world at the time. While many ancient civilizations struggled with their climates, the Persians had mastered the art of staying comfortable in a world that could be unrelenting. You're handed a bowl of chilled fruit, perhaps dates or pomegranates, that have been kept cool thanks to the ice from the yakshils. As you take a bite, you realize how deeply intertwined cooling technology was with every aspect of life in ancient Persia. It wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival, about thriving in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But it wasn't just the homes of the wealthy that benefited from these cooling techniques. As you move deeper into the heart of the city, you start to see how these systems were integrated into public spaces. 2. In the busy marketplace, vendors have set up shop under the shade of large awnings, where air flows freely from nearby windcatchers. The streets, though bustling with activity, feel cooler than they have any right to, thanks to the careful design of the city's layout. The public bathhouses, another Persian innovation, are another example of how the entire city was built with temperature control in mind. These bathhouses were not just for cleanliness, they were centers of social life. And, of course, they were designed to be cool and comfortable places to relax in the scorching heat. You can't help but be amazed by the seamless integration of all these systems. The windcatchers are pulling air from the Qanats. The yakshils are storing ice for use in public baths and markets. And the homes are designed to stay cool with minimal effort. Everything is connected, all working in harmony with the desert. But what's truly remarkable is how all of this was accomplished without the aid of modern technology. The ancient Persians, with their deep understanding of their environment, crafted a cooling system that would be the envy of any modern engineer. In a world where we rely on electricity and air conditioning to stay cool, it's humbling to realize that thousands of years ago, the Persians were already harnessing the power of nature to create comfort in one of the harshest climates on Earth. And yet, these cooling techniques weren't just about convenience, they were a matter of status. To have a windcatcher on your roof or ice in your home wasn't just a sign of comfort, it was a sign of wealth and power. The elites of ancient Persia lived in relative coolness, while the common people did what they could to survive the heat. But what's most fascinating is that these systems didn't just disappear when the Persians were conquered by other empires. The knowledge of these cooling techniques spread throughout the Middle East, and even into Europe, influencing architecture and cooling systems for centuries to come. As you reflect on all this, you realize that the ancient Persians were more than just survivors. They were innovators. They took the extreme heat of the desert and turned it into an opportunity to create a better life, a life that was cool, comfortable, and sustainable. The legacy of their ingenuity is still with us today, in the design of modern air conditioning systems and the growing movement toward sustainable, nature-powered solutions. You smile, feeling the gentle desert breeze against your face. Perhaps, in the end, the secret to staying cool in this world isn't found in a machine, but in the wisdom of those who knew how to work with the land, rather than against it. You walk through the city, the sun now hanging low in the sky. The air has cooled ever so slightly, but the lingering heat still clings to the streets, like a reminder of the battle the Persians fought every day. As you continue your journey, you start to realize that these ancient cooling systems weren't just isolated solutions, they were part of a larger, more sophisticated strategy, a strategy that spread beyond the homes of the wealthy and into the entire urban fabric. The city itself, it seems, was designed to stay cool. Think about it. The entire layout of the city, from its winding streets to its compact houses, was built with one thing in mind: managing the desert's heat. The Persians had a unique approach to city planning. They didn't just build for function. They built to create a flow of air, to catch the winds, to bring coolness into every corner. It's all starting to click now. And as you walk through the city, you notice the slight slope of the streets, the strategic placement of buildings, and the way that every corner seems to encourage a breeze. Even the narrow, winding streets, with their tall buildings on either side, seem designed to funnel air from the windcatchers, guiding it into the homes and courtyards. Historians still debate how much influence this unique style of city planning had on other civilizations. But there's no denying the brilliance of it. The city wasn't just a collection of houses and shops, it was an intricate, living system that worked in harmony with the desert. It was about managing temperature, water, and air, all at once. As you turn a corner, you find yourself standing in front of another public space, a large, open square. It's cooler here, thanks to the shade cast by the surrounding buildings and the constant flow of air from the windcatchers. The square is alive with people, some sitting in the shade, others walking slowly, perhaps waiting for the sun to set entirely. In the center of the square, there's a fountain, a public water feature. But more importantly, it's part of the cooling system. Water, in this world, was not just a resource. It was a tool to cool the air, to create an atmosphere of comfort, and to bring life to an otherwise unforgiving environment. The sound of the fountain splashing gently echoes around you, a soothing reminder that the Persians didn't just build cities, they created oases. Spaces of refuge in a desert that could, if left unchecked, suffocate all life. But these spaces weren't random. They were carefully thought out, with each element, from the placement of the windcatchers to the design of the courtyards and fountains, working in tandem to provide comfort, to cool the air, and to create a sense of tranquility amid the heat. You pause, standing in the cool shade of an awning, and take a deep breath. The air here is different, fresher, cooler, and more alive than anywhere else you've been in the city. You can't help but feel that the Persians, in their wisdom, had achieved something remarkable. They had turned the desert's most punishing feature, the heat, into something that could be managed, something that could be lived with. As you continue walking, you can't help but think about how little we've learned from their ancient cooling systems. Sure, modern technology has given us air conditioners, fans, and coolers, but there's something deeply elegant about the Persian approach. It was simple, sustainable, and in many ways, far more connected to the natural world than our modern solutions. And yet, the principles they used, wind, water, shade, and careful city planning, are still relevant today. In a world where we're more concerned with energy consumption and environmental impact than ever before, the lessons of the Persians seem more vital than ever. What would it look like if we started to build our cities with the same reverence for the natural world, the same understanding of airflow and temperature, as the ancient Persians? It's a thought that lingers in your mind as you walk through the city, taking in the carefully designed streets, the cooling air, and the ingenious solutions to desert living. The Persians had figured out a way to live comfortably in one of the harshest climates on Earth, and they did it with ingenuity, patience, and a deep respect for the world around them. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we start looking back to their wisdom, not to copy them exactly, but to learn from their approach and apply it to our own lives, our own cities, and our own futures. Because if they could live comfortably in the desert, surely we can find a way to thrive in the heat of today's world. You reach a quiet corner of the city, where the streets are empty, and the only sound is the faint hum of the windcatchers in the distance. The air is cool now, a refreshing break from the heat of the day. You take a deep breath and smile, knowing that you've seen something special, something ancient, yet timeless. As the sun finally dips beneath the horizon, the city transforms. The oppressive heat of the day recedes, replaced by the crisp coolness of evening. You've been walking for what feels like hours, taking in the genius of Persian climate control. And now, as the streets quiet down and the shadows stretch long, you pause to reflect on what you've seen. You realize that the ancient Persians didn't just live in a desert, they mastered it. They didn't fight against nature, they worked with it, turning the desert's unforgiving heat into an opportunity for innovation, beauty, and comfort. And in doing so, they created a legacy that continues to influence modern design, from architecture to sustainable cooling systems. As you walk deeper into the city, you notice something else. The structure and layout of this ancient place are not just functional, but deliberate. Every corner, every curve of the street seems designed with purpose. And this purpose wasn't just survival, it was comfort. The city was built to make life livable, even in the harshest environment, by using every element of the natural world to its advantage. Think about it. The winding streets that forced the air to flow in just the right way. The placement of homes to avoid the harsh midday sun. The central courtyards designed to be shaded oases, where families could rest and socialize in the coolness of the breeze. And, of course, the intricate network of windcatchers, yakshals, and qanats, all working in tandem to create a comfortable microclimate in the midst of the desert. You stop in the middle of a bustling square. People are gathered in groups, sipping cool drinks and laughing together. The heat of the day is a distant memory now, as the air feels fresh and soothing. The windcatchers continue to hum in the background, their silent work invisible but ever present. What you're witnessing here isn't just about surviving the desert heat, it's about living in harmony with it. It's about using the tools of the land, the wind, the sun, the earth, and water, to create a balanced, comfortable environment. The Persians didn't just use nature's resources, they understood them, worked with them, and crafted solutions that allowed them to thrive in an environment where most would have simply struggled to survive. It's easy to take air conditioning for granted today. We flick a switch, and the cool air flows in. But the ancient Persians didn't have that luxury. Instead, they built entire systems, structures, and cities that harnessed the power of nature to keep them cool. It was a labor of love, patience, and deep knowledge of the land they called home. And now, standing in this quiet square, you realize that the true beauty of their ingenuity lies in its simplicity. They didn't invent anything that didn't already exist in nature. They simply figured out how to harness it, how to create a sustainable, comfortable environment without relying on complex machinery or external resources. As you make your way through the city, past the windcatchers, the ice pits, and the shaded courtyards, you can't help but feel a sense of admiration for the ancient Persians. They were pioneers of sustainable living, long before the term became popular. They understood that true comfort comes not from conquering the land, but from learning to live with it. They took what nature offered, wind, water, sun and earth, and created a world where people could thrive. Even in the heart of the desert, you feel a sense of peace as you walk back toward the city's edge. The last traces of sunlight fading behind you. The night air is cool now, and you breathe deeply, grateful for the lessons this ancient civilization has shared. The Persians, it seems, knew more about sustainable living than many of us give them credit for. And as you look up at the stars, you realize something profound. In their quest to stay cool, the Persians didn't just create a system of air conditioning. They created a model for living in harmony with the world around them. A model we could all learn from, if only we took the time to listen. You step into the coolness of the night, feeling a deep sense of connection to the ancient city. The Persians knew that to live well in the desert, they had to work with the land, not against it. And maybe, just maybe, the key to surviving today's challenges lies in that same philosophy. The windcatchers hum quietly in the background, their work done for the day. But their legacy lives on. The city sleeps, cool and comfortable, thanks to the wisdom of those who came before. You can't help but smile as you look around, knowing that, for all the advancements we've made, there's still much to learn from the past. The coolness of the desert night lingers as you continue your journey through the quiet streets of the ancient Persian city. There's a certain magic to this place, a calmness that you feel deep in your bones. It's as if the city itself breathes, drawing in the evening air, releasing it back into the night in a peaceful rhythm that mirrors the gentle flow of the qanats beneath your feet. You pause near a beautifully crafted door, its carved wood intricate with designs that seem to tell a story. Though you don't know the words, you wonder about the lives lived behind these cool walls, how people worked, played, and rested in comfort, even as the desert beyond threatened to bake the land. But the magic isn't just in the cool air or the shaded courtyards, it's in how everything here is connected. The Persians didn't just build systems of cooling, they built a city that thrived on interconnectedness. They understood that survival in a harsh environment wasn't about building walls and shutting the world out, it was about building systems that worked together to create balance. Each part of the city, windcatchers, yakshals, qanats, and courtyards, played a role in maintaining that balance. Walking further through the city, you begin to notice more subtle aspects of this balance. The walls of the homes are sometimes lined with vines, thick greenery climbing up to meet the rooftops, weaving together with the windcatchers. The plants play their part in cooling the air too, through the process of transpiration, where water evaporates from their leaves. lowering the temperature around them. It's almost poetic, isn't it? In a place where survival was a constant battle, the Persians found a way to make everything, plants, air, water, and stone, work together to create a sanctuary in the middle of the desert. It's this harmony that allowed their cooling systems to be so effective. It wasn't just about having one element like a windcatcher or a Qanat. It was about integrating these elements into the very design of the city, so that no part of the system was left to fend for itself. As you make your way toward the outskirts of the city, you notice a faint glow in the distance. It's the faint light of a lantern, casting its warm glow over a group of people gathered in a small garden. The air here is noticeably cooler, thanks to the carefully placed windcatchers. The gardens, and the nearby Qanat, the people are sitting, chatting, laughing softly, enjoying the gentle coolness of the evening. It's hard not to be struck by the simplicity of it all. While modern cities might rely on sprawling networks of air conditioning units, fans, and machines to cool down, the Persians relied on something far more elegant, something far more in tune with nature. They didn't dominate the environment, they worked with it. They didn't fight the desert, they learned its ways and adapted. You think about your own world, where people rush from one air-conditioned room to another, where the battle against heat seems endless and expensive. And then you think about the ancient Persians, who lived in the desert but found ways to make their cities as cool and comfortable as any modern climate-controlled building. And they did it without electricity, without fossil fuels, and without the need for complex machinery. It's humbling, really. The Persian approach wasn't just about surviving in the heat, it was about understanding that the land, the climate, and the elements were partners in life, not adversaries. It was about finding ways to live in harmony with the world around you, using the resources available to create a better, more comfortable life. And this harmony wasn't just limited to the cooling systems they designed. It was present in every aspect of Persian life, from their architecture to their gardens, from their public spaces to their homes. The Persians integrated natural systems into their daily lives in a way that allowed them to thrive. Even in one of the harshest environments on Earth, you sit for a moment in the garden, listening to the sound of the wind, feeling the cool air on your skin, and reflecting on everything you've learned. The ancient Persians, with their windcatchers and yakshals, their qanats and courtyards, created something beautiful, a system of living that not only made life in the desert possible but also made it comfortable. They turned the harshness of the desert into a place of refuge, a place where people could live, work, and relax in the cool embrace of the air they had learned to tame. And as you look around at the quiet, peaceful city, its ancient systems still working to this day, you realize that the legacy of the Persians is more than just the technology they left behind. It's a legacy of ingenuity, of understanding, and of living in harmony with the environment. You take one last look at the lanterns flickering in the distance, their soft light casting shadows on the garden walls. In the stillness of the evening, you realize that the true wisdom of the ancient Persians lies in their understanding that the best way to thrive in the desert wasn't through force or technology, but through balance and harmony with nature. And as the night deepens, the windcatchers continue their silent work, catching the breeze, cooling the air, and whispering the secrets of a time when people knew how to live in tune with the world around them. As you step away from the peaceful garden, your mind still lingers on the elegance of the Persian approach to life in the desert. The more you explore this ancient city, the more you realize how deeply everything is connected. The cooling systems weren't just individual marvels of engineering, they were the building blocks of a larger philosophy, one that permeated every aspect of Persian life. You find yourself standing in a bustling market square, the last traces of daylight fading, and you notice the subtle yet undeniable influence of Persian cooling techniques on the public spaces around you. The air is cooler here, even though the market is still lively with traders calling out their wares. But you don't feel the oppressive heat you would expect from a market at this hour. Instead, there's a sense of ease in the air, a quiet relief that hints at the underlying systems of comfort woven throughout the city. You look around at the stalls, the people, and the architecture. The vendors are sitting under wide, colorful canopies, their faces shaded from the last rays of the sun. The roofs of the buildings around you are crowned with the familiar structures of windcatchers, silently pulling in the cool evening air. The marketplace is alive, yes, But there's an unmistakable serenity to it as well. People move comfortably, the warmth of the day long forgotten. It's impossible to ignore how much thought has gone into every corner of this city. There's not a single feature that isn't designed with care, with an understanding of the elements and how to live alongside them. The windcatchers and the Qanats, those quiet, subterranean rivers, work together to cool the air, to bring fresh water into the homes, and to create a city where life thrives in harmony with nature. You think about how, today, the world is often divided between those who live in cities powered by massive infrastructure and those who live in rural areas, disconnected from such systems. But here, in ancient Persia, the distinction wasn't between the city and the countryside, it was between people who understood the rhythms of the earth and those who didn't. The city itself was part of the land, as much a part of nature as the desert it grew out of. As you walk through the market, you stop by a stall where an elderly woman is selling delicate ceramics, their surfaces gleaming softly in the fading light. The pottery is beautiful, but what catches your attention is the way the pieces are displayed, under shaded awnings, arranged carefully in patterns that maximize airflow and minimize exposure to the heat. There's a kind of artistry to the way these items are placed, as if the arrangement itself contributes to their preservation, as if every movement, every design, is designed to create a balance between the functional and the aesthetic. It's a small, almost imperceptible detail, but it perfectly encapsulates the Persian philosophy of living. There is no need to fight against the land, to overpower it with machines or systems that exhaust resources. Instead, the Persians sought ways to work with nature, to draw upon the gifts it offered and use them in the most efficient, sustainable ways possible. You move on, now deeper into the city, where the air feels cool and still, thanks to the clever placement of homes and courtyards, designed to catch the breeze and protect the inhabitants from the sun. The shadows of the buildings stretch long across the cobblestone streets. The air feels lighter, and for a moment, you're reminded of just how smart the ancient Persians were. They understood that the simplest solutions often work best, and in doing so, they created a system that was timeless. But you're not just here to admire the architecture, are you? The true genius of this city lies in the way it encourages a lifestyle that balances comfort with sustainability. It's not just the windcatchers or the yakshals. It's the fact that every space in this city, from the private homes to the public gardens, from the marketplaces to the palaces, has been designed with the understanding that humans and nature are not separate forces, they are partners. You think back to the start of your journey, to the moments when you first set foot in this city. At first, the desert seemed like an insurmountable challenge, one that would require technology and power to overcome. But now, as you walk these streets, it's clear that the Persians didn't view their environment as something to conquer. They viewed it as something to understand, to respect, and to work with. There's a lesson here, isn't there? In a world where many of us are disconnected from nature, where we often try to bend the land to our will, the ancient Persians offer a different way. A way of balance, a way of respecting the environment, of finding harmony between the natural world and human ingenuity. They didn't build massive machines or fight the land, they built systems that worked with it, that used nature's resources in the most efficient and sustainable way possible. And as you stand here, in the heart of the city, you realize that this is not just about air conditioning or cooling systems. This is about living in a way that is sustainable, thoughtful, and deeply connected to the land. This is about creating a world where people can live comfortably without exhausting the resources they depend on. It's a lesson that we would do well to remember today. The windcatchers hum softly in the background as the last light fades from the sky. The city around you continues to live and breathe, a testament to the brilliance of a civilization that understood the true meaning of balance. The Persians didn't just survive the desert, they thrived in it. And in doing so, they created a world that would stand the test of time. You take one last look around, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the wisdom of the past. And as you turn to leave, you can't help but think that maybe, just maybe, we've lost something along the way, something simple, yet profound, the art of living with the land. And perhaps, that's the real legacy of the ancient Persians. You find yourself wandering further through the city streets as night deepens. The temperature continues to drop, a gentle breeze caressing your skin, a gift from the desert's rhythm that the Persians had learned to harness. It's as if the city itself breathes in time with the earth, drawing cool air into its veins and pushing out the heat of the day. This isn't happenstance, it's design. You've already met the windcatchers. Those towering sentinels pulling air into homes. You've seen the Qanats, their hidden waterways feeding coolness beneath your feet. You've explored the yakshals, the mysterious ice houses that defied desert logic. But now, you're stepping back to see the city itself. Especially places like Yazd, laid out with the deliberate precision of a masterful artist. Yazd is more than a city, it's a living blueprint of climate-conscious urban planning. Its narrow, winding streets form a maze that's as much about cooling as it is about defense or social order. These twisting paths force winds to funnel and swirl, increasing airflow to keep temperatures down. Tall buildings on either side provide shade, blocking the brutal midday sun while allowing low-angle light and breezes to navigate the labyrinth. Historians debate how much was intentional versus organic growth, but there's compelling evidence that this layout was purposeful. The entire city functions as an enormous natural air conditioner, designed to protect its inhabitants from the extremes of desert heat. You notice how rooftops are not just bare terraces but active living spaces, often cooler than the streets below. Residents sleep under the stars on flat roofs during summer nights, where the windcatchers deliver refreshing gusts. This rooftop living is a clever adaptation to climate, escaping the stuffy interiors for the cooler open air, yet still protected and elevated above street level. As you wander, you can't help but marvel at the foresight. Here is a city that doesn't fight the desert, it embraces it, making it part of its character. The buildings and streets form a symbiotic relationship with the climate, creating pockets of relief amid the harshness. What's even more impressive is how sustainable these designs are. There's no electricity powering fans or compressors here, just centuries-old architecture and nature's own forces at work. This isn't just engineering, it's philosophy. It's a way of living with respect for the environment, understanding that comfort doesn't have to come at the expense of the land. You're reminded of the scholarly debates surrounding ancient urban planning. How much was deliberate climate adaptation? And how much was born from cultural, religious, or defensive needs? It's likely a mixture. But what stands out is the undeniable cooling effect achieved by the city's layout. And this knowledge wasn't confined to Persia. Through trade, conquest, and cultural exchange, the principles of these cooling techniques spread throughout the Middle East and beyond, influencing architecture in places far from the desert. The legacy of Yazd and other Persian cities lives on in the wind towers of Egypt, the courtyard houses of the Mediterranean, and even modern sustainable design. You pause on a rooftop terrace, feeling the evening air swirl softly around you. The stars begin to emerge, and the cool desert night wraps around the city like a comforting blanket. You realize that this city, these buildings, these systems, they're not relics of the past but lessons for the future. The Persians showed us how to listen to the wind, to shape our homes and cities in harmony with nature, and to find comfort without waste. As you gaze across the cityscape, you can't help but wonder, what would our modern cities look like if we applied even a fraction of this ancient wisdom? The answer feels like a breath of fresh air. You can almost hear the echoes of history as you walk through the remnants of Persian cities, feeling the persistent wind that has carried tales of conquest and culture for centuries. The ingenious cooling systems you've seen, windcatchers, Qanats, yakshals, didn't just shape daily life, they also became silent witnesses to the tides of empire. The Persians weren't alone in this desert landscape for long. Over the centuries, empires rose and fell. Greeks, Arabs, Mongols, all came with armies, ambitions, and their own ways of life. Yet despite the upheaval, the Persian climate technologies endured. Invaders marveled at these cooling marvels, often adopting and adapting them for their own use. Take the Greeks, for instance. When Alexander the Great conquered Persia, he was struck not only by the opulence of the palaces but also by the clever cooling systems that kept the desert heat at bay. Stories tell of Greek engineers studying the badgirs and Qanats, learning from them and incorporating aspects into their own architectural styles. Centuries later, the Arab conquerors further refined and spread these techniques throughout the Islamic world. The windcatcher became a staple in cities from Cairo to Baghdad, and the knowledge of Qanats and yakshals influenced urban planning far beyond Persia's borders. Historians still debate the exact routes and timing of these technological transmissions. But the impact is undeniable. Persian cooling architecture became a foundational element of Middle Eastern building traditions, a testament to the durability and effectiveness of these ancient designs. But here's a quirky twist. Despite their brilliance, some conquerors initially dismissed these structures as mere curiosities, underestimating their practicality. It took time for the true genius of these systems to be appreciated and integrated fully. You stroll past an old fortress where you notice windcatchers rising above the walls, reminders that even military architecture valued comfort. Soldiers and leaders alike benefited from the cool breezes and shaded retreats, showing that these systems were not just for civilian luxury but essential for strategic endurance. The Mongols, infamous for their brutal conquests, surprisingly left some Persian cities intact precisely because of the value placed on these cooling systems. It's said they admired the sophistication and ensured the preservation of key infrastructures, knowing that survival in such harsh environments required more than just military might. Even as empires changed hands and cultures blended, the core principles of Persian climate technology remained. They evolved, of course, new materials, refinements, and adaptations, but the foundation laid by the Persians endured. You stop for a moment and imagine the conversations between Persian engineers and foreign architects. The exchange of ideas fueled by curiosity and necessity. It's a reminder that innovation often crosses borders, carried by travelers, traders, and conquerors alike. This legacy also raises important questions still discussed among scholars. How much credit should be given to the Persians as originators versus the cultures that later adopted and transformed these technologies? While the debate continues, the undeniable truth is that without the Persian foundation, much of Middle Eastern architectural cooling would be unrecognizable. You feel a sense of awe. These cooling systems weren't just technical feats, they were cultural bridges, connecting people through shared knowledge and the universal need for comfort. As the sun sets behind the city walls, casting long shadows, you realize that the true conquest wasn't just of land or power, but of climate itself. The Persians taught their successors that even the fiercest desert could be tamed, not by force, but by respect and ingenuity. And that lesson? It's still as vital today as it was 1,000 years ago. You step into the present day, where ancient Persian cities stand as living museums, their cooling technologies slowly rediscovered and appreciated by architects, engineers, and sustainability experts alike. After centuries of reliance on electricity and fossil fuels, modern society is circling back to the wisdom embedded in those windcatchers, Qanats, and yakshals. Across Iran and beyond, restoration projects are breathing life into these old marvels. Scholars dig through dusty manuscripts and crumble ruins, piecing together the blueprints that once cooled entire cities. They study the airflow patterns, the materials used, the geometry of the domes and towers, all in hopes of reviving designs that are as efficient as they are elegant. It's a fascinating intersection of history and innovation. Modern architects are incorporating windcatchers into contemporary buildings, not just for nostalgia but to reduce energy consumption. Some are even designing new homes with passive cooling systems inspired by Persian techniques, showing how ancient ideas can solve today's pressing environmental challenges. There's an open debate in scholarly circles about how to best adapt these traditional methods to modern contexts. Can we integrate windcatchers into high-rise urban environments? How do we balance historical authenticity with the need for contemporary building codes and technologies? While no one has all the answers yet, the possibilities are exciting. You might smile at some quirky attempts to modernize these ancient ideas, like windcatcher-inspired skyscrapers with glass towers shaped like Persian domes. Sometimes it feels like ancient meets futuristic in a slightly whimsical way. But the core principle remains: cooling by harnessing natural airflow, without depending heavily on electricity. In a world grappling with climate change and rising temperatures, the resurgence of interest in Persian cooling systems feels like a timely reminder. These designs don't just cool, they conserve. They respect natural cycles, and they work with the environment rather than against it. And perhaps the greatest rediscovery is not just architectural but philosophical. The ancient Persians understood that true comfort comes not from overpowering nature, but from listening to it, adjusting, adapting, and living in harmony. As you wander a modern city that's adopting these principles, you see rooftop gardens paired with windcatchers, shaded courtyards designed to capture breezes, and underground water channels that cool the air naturally. It's a future that feels a lot like the past, but with new tools and technologies to make the old wisdom even more effective. You realize that Persian air conditioning wasn't just a historical curiosity, it's a blueprint for sustainable living. A whisper from the past, urging us to rethink how we build, how we cool, and how we live. And standing there, watching the wind stir the leaves in a courtyard designed centuries ago, you finally understand why we haven't forgotten these systems entirely. They're still waiting for us to listen, to learn, and to act. As you continue walking through the modern city, now with a deeper understanding of the Persian legacy, you can't help but feel a sense of calm. The windcatchers of the past are no longer just historical artifacts, they're symbols of a wisdom that feels increasingly relevant today. In a world grappling with urban heat islands, dwindling resources, and climate change, the solutions the ancient Persians devised seem not just ingenious, but necessary. You glance up at a modern skyscraper, its sleek glass panels glinting in the fading light. On its roof, you spot the faint silhouette of a windcatcher, a nod to the Persian past. Reimagined for the 21st century, it's not just for show, it's part of a larger passive cooling system, designed to channel the breeze down into the building's atrium, reducing the need for energy-intensive air conditioning. It's a subtle yet powerful reminder that even in our technological age, we still have much to learn from those who lived long before us. You step into the heart of a new residential complex, one built with sustainability at its core. The homes are designed to capture the natural airflow, with strategically placed windows and terraces that encourage cross-ventilation. The materials used are locally sourced, natural, and designed to regulate temperature, just as the Persians once did. Inside, the rooms are cool and comfortable, and it doesn't take much to maintain that comfort. There's no hum of air conditioners, no whirring of fans, just the soft rustle of leaves, the gentle whisper of the breeze passing through the open windows. You think about how, for all the advances in technology, modern society is beginning to look back to simpler, more sustainable solutions. In a way, the Persians have come full circle, from being dismissed as backward to being revered as masters of sustainable design. Their techniques, once seen as quaint relics of an ancient time, are now the very models for a future that must reckon with an increasingly unpredictable climate. In this complex, you stop for a moment to watch the children playing in a shaded courtyard. They laugh and run, chasing one another through the cool, quiet space. The windcatchers above them create a subtle draft, sending a soft breeze across the open area. You smile, realizing that this is what the Persians understood all along. True comfort, true resilience, comes from working with nature, not against it. It's almost poetic how the same principles that shaped the ancient cities are now being used to create new ways of living in harmony with the environment. And though the methods have evolved, the spirit remains unchanged. The ancient Persians, who lived and thrived in one of the harshest climates on Earth, understood that to build a sustainable future, we must first understand the world around us. The wind, the sun, the earth, they are not forces to be dominated. They are partners, providing the resources and energy we need to survive and thrive. The Persians knew this, and in their brilliance, they crafted a world that worked in harmony with the land. As you step out of the complex, you take a deep breath. The air is cool, the breeze gentle, and for a moment, you feel a deep sense of connection to the past, to the land, and to the future. In a world that often feels disconnected from nature, the lessons of the ancient Persians stand as a beacon of hope, reminding us that living in balance with the earth is not just possible, it's the only way forward. You look up at the sky, the stars beginning to twinkle as night falls. The city around you is alive, but it's not just bustling with activity, it's breathing, living in rhythm with the earth. And in that moment, you realize that this journey, this exploration of ancient wisdom, has led you to a profound truth. Sustainability isn't a new idea. It's an ancient one, waiting to be rediscovered. The windcatchers hum in the background. The Qanats flow quietly beneath the streets, and the coolness of the night air wraps around you like a comforting embrace. The past, present, and future are linked in a delicate dance of harmony. reminding you that the solutions we need are often right in front of us, if only we take the time to look. And as the city sleeps, cool and comfortable, you find peace in knowing that the lessons of the Persians, and the wisdom of living in balance with the world, will continue to guide us long into the future. End of script. Sweet dreams.